So thank you all for joining us today to discuss the topic of green finance. So one of the most impactful things you can do when it comes to living more sustainable is to quite literally put your money where your mouth is. Changing your, I think I've heard it said that changing your current account to a more sustainable bank is, I think they say, double the carbon impact of going vegan, never flying again, and never driving again combined. It's absolutely huge. It has so much more impact than I think a lot of people realise. And outside of just your current account, the same goes for your mortgage, your credit cards, insurance products, things like that. So yeah, it's a huge topic. And we are joined by two fantastic speakers today who are helping us in different ways to make our money greener. So first up, we're joined by Liall Medina, who is co-founder at Etcho. And Etcho have built a web and mobile app which helps investors to build ethical investment portfolios. Their data helps fund managers to build portfolios which are genuinely sustainable and avoid greenwashing. And it helps individuals to invest in companies that are truly aligned with their values across all of the sustainable development goals. We'll then be joined by Oli Cook, co-founder of Ekko. Ekko's technology is embedding positive impact into every transaction we make. So they have a suite of products for banks, for businesses, and for individuals, which I'm sure Oli will explain to you in much more detail, but one of which is a debit card, which helps to remove plastic from the oceans and plant trees in line with your purchases. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from both of them about how they got into the sector, what their companies are doing, and the skills that they'll be looking for in their businesses as they continue to grow. So yeah, that's enough from me. Liall, no further ado, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Really excited to have a chat. I guess quite a lot to talk about, so where to start. I guess what Etcho does is a good place, and then perhaps I can talk about how I somehow ended up doing what I'm doing. But yeah, as Cherry said, really, Etcho is a platform. We originally built an app with the idea to help people align their impact values with their kind of investment goals. So originally, we started our journey a couple of years ago, and we built this app in which a user would download the app, they would jump on it, and we would say, okay, well, what kind of things are you interested in? Because I think one thing in sustainability and finance is not everyone's interested in the same things, and that's absolutely fine. You know, not everyone is absolutely determined to help the environment. They might be interested in no poverty, you know, lots of different goals, and that's fine. So we really wanted to start the journey with that. So we use the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm sure lots of you know what these are, but there's 17 goals that were established by the United Nations, from things like ending no poverty to climate action. And then from that, once a user tells us what they're interested in, we will suggest ways in which they can improve their investment portfolio to help align with those goals. So maybe we'll pull up specific companies or specific funds that are really helping to progress in those goals. And then what we found from kind of a business point of view, interestingly, was it's quite difficult to scale a business like that by just releasing, you know, a B2C app. And we said, well, how can we really kind of spread our goal and spread our message quicker? So we moved more into the B2B world as well. So as Cherry said, helping kind of fund managers, helping if people have financial advisors, you know, helping them have the tools and resources to help their clients align their values with their investment goals. And then what we found was there's so much data, and I'll go into this when I talk about how I got into this, so much data and information around impact and sustainability that can be, and Jerry, you talk about carbon. I mean, there's like 1,000 different carbon data providers now, and they're all saying, you know, often different things. It's like, where do we go? You know, this is so overwhelming, this information. We found out what's really missing here is not another data provider. It's someone that takes all this information, all this information and says, okay, well, what does it actually mean? I know I want to align my portfolio or my funds or my investments to a more greener future, but what does that actually mean? So can someone explain, can someone create an engaging tool? Can someone educate me on what do all these terms mean? Sustainability, impact. So the education piece really came into play for us kind of especially in the last kind of 6 months. And that's where we are now. We are a platform where if you are a wealth advisor, you can sit down with your client, you can really have an engaging conversation and say, look, let's create a portfolio that really aligns with the things that you care about. And that wasn't by adding more data, it was really creating engaging materials. But I guess to bring it back to this conversation, we are very much a tech-powered company. So we built, as Cherry said, we built an app originally. We've now built kind of an online portal. How did I end up here? It's quite a good question. So I did seems quite a long time ago now, but I did a master's in climate change, finance and management, which was really niche at the time. I kind of, my background was in like the sciences. I had quite a passion for finance, and I knew that somehow I must be able to blend these. And I looked for masters at the time, and there was about two in the country, one in Edinburgh and one at Imperial College. So I took that master's. I finished that at the business school. Geez, when was that? About 2017, something like that, 2018. I then, through that, got some work experience actually at a company called True Cost. So how that happened was, the best thing about that master's, if I don't know if it'll be relevant to some people, maybe not some, but wasn't so much what you learn, it was just the crowd that you're surrounded with, the people that you're with. Everyone is kind of so ambitious, trying to really do something with their careers, and you can really lean on them. And I think that's the best thing about doing something like that at a master's. It's not really that what you're learning, the subject, it's who's around you. And I still lean on them now as a business, if I need some help doing certain elements, whether it's I need to speak to someone about climate pathways, or even the educational piece that I mentioned, I can lean on these people. So that's what was really great about doing that master's. And then I got at the time, I think it was like a paid internship at a company called True Cost. And what they were doing was trying to calculate carbon when it comes to finance, basically financial funds and stuff like that. So if I'm a bigger pension fund, what is my carbon footprint? You mentioned your current account, for example. How would I work out the carbon footprint of the companies I'm invested in? So anyway, they started doing that. And then through that, I ended up working for a big company, which I'm sure many of you know, which is Standard & Poor's. So working there in their product team. So I was developing all these frameworks to help big financial institutions really get to grips with things like carbon accounting, or what is the biodiversity loss if I invest in these companies. So quite complex themes. But I guess the point I'm trying to make there is sustainability now is so embedded in every different workflow, whether that's marketing, whether that's, obviously we're talking about tech today, finance, that if you have like a skill set, you can almost always apply it to sustainability in some way or other. So especially within tech, and I'll explain how in a sec. But yeah, and he ended up working at Standard & Poor's for a long time. And again, then I was just trying to pick up as many different skills as possible. I was probably pretty annoying to work with because I kept moving position, and then basically worked my way up and around, and then ended up kind of more on the sales team because I wanted to know what are people actually doing with this information. And I think that's something our tech guy, James, looks at. It's like, it's really important. What exactly are you going to be doing with this product, and really getting to grips with that. And then COVID happened, and I thought, well, you know what? The world's changing, and maybe I need to change. And I've always wanted to do my own thing. And while we were providing lots of sustainability services to these big banks and asset owners, I was like, well, what about just someone like myself? What about the everyday person that doesn't have millions of pounds, but just wants to do something with their money? And I think that's also why Ekko is pretty cool as well, because it's like for the everyday person. So I put my head together with who's now my co-founder, Charlie, and we came up with Etcho. And yeah, the premise at the very start, we've pivoted to get where we are, but the idea at the very start was that, yeah, we were going to create a trading app in which you can choose your goals and then invest directly into those companies. And for different reasons, we didn't add the trading feature. And then, I mean, you'll probably notice for this whole thing, I haven't got any real tech background, which is quite interesting. And I think that's why I was quite interested to do this talk when when I was asked, is because I think there's a lot of people who work for tech companies that might not have strict tech backgrounds, have done, worked in big tech roles, but what they can do is surround themselves with the right people who work in tech. And I think that's really important, because we always see talks about like working in tech jobs to get those careers, but if you don't necessarily have a really specific tech background, you don't code or whatever it may be, you can still form a tech company. I mean, most companies now are in some way tech companies. You could probably say like nearly all companies in, strictly could be a tech company, if you know what I mean. So we actually, through many different avenues and networks, brought on our tech lead, James, who's brilliant. And yeah, that really how we've become a tech company. He's built all the tech along with some others, is, as I said, just surrounding yourself with the right people who work in that space. And we've gone to agencies, we've gone to a few different people, but why it works with James is he becomes a core member outside of the tech team. And I think that's really important, right? Because most companies now, I mean, that's quite a general thing to say, but to some degree are largely tech companies. That tech lead needs to also have kind of that management role and be integral to the other parts of the business. And for someone like myself who is managing this company, it also needs to be kind of involved in the tech, if you know what I mean. So it's I think what I'm trying to say is just important to surround yourself with the right people. And if you're looking, if you're in that tech world, then there are so many applications now for sustainability. So for example, for Etcho, we created the tech is just a portal that manages people's portfolios and then applies essentially a sustainability overlay. That it's quite simple. That's all it's really doing. There's more to it, but you could summarize it like that. You could go as far as, for these, you see so many now sustainable roles in financial services. Like over the last 3 years, it's crazy. Even since I left my master's, like, sustainable climate risk, all of these involve a lot of tech and a lot of analytics. So yeah, there's a whole load of jobs now coming out, but I guess you can either get through it to helping a company that specializes in sustainability but needs the tech, like Etcho, or if you're already tech based, then there's plenty of applications for sustainability. But yeah, maybe I'll leave it there because I'm waffling slightly, but I think we've got some breakout sessions if anyone had any questions on specific points.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Liall, and thank you very much for sharing that whole journey in, because I think that's really kind of relatable. Hopefully it'll be very relatable to people on the call. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, echoing that point that I think we make in this community really often, which is that every job can be a green job. And that even in the technology sector, you don't necessarily need to be a tech person per se, but that every sustainable tech company needs finance, needs sales, needs marketing, and needs that support. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Liall. And now, Oli, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. By the way, Liall, I totally agree. I'm not a tech person, and yet I'm a CEO and co-founder of a tech business. So it is not a barrier. In fact, it's quite a good thing because you have a different perspective in the conversation. So I think that's a good thing. So hi, I'm Oli, co-founder, CEO of Ekko. We're a multi-award-winning embedded sustainability platform that looks to unleash the power of retail transactions as a force for good. And as Cherry touched on, we do it in lots and lots of different ways, which I'll come on to. But I thought it'd be better just talk about my background first, and then I'll come on to about Ekko and what we do. So my background isn't in sustainability at all. I am 15 plus years in financial services and banking, and then stepped over. So I kind of grew up in the big bank world, spending 8 years at HSBC running savings and FX for the group there after starting on a graduate scheme. Then slowly moved on to smaller businesses with bigger impact because I wanted to be able to change things versus being a cog in a massive machine. I always find titles in big companies are good, but really it goes up layers till you actually make a proper decision in the world. So I went from HSBC to running products at Metro Bank, which is a really interesting challenger bank, grew it from 1 to 2 million customers. And that was a business that was going through a kind of what I call the teenage years of startup into proper bank with loads of customers, really impactful. So that was a really interesting experience to see how startups mature and the important parts that come with it, and the decisions you make early on, which are the right decisions right then, but the impact of that 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, and how you solve that. That was really kind of insightful for me. And then I went to smaller and smaller companies, helped launch Monument Bank, Tandem Bank, and then moved over to insurance, where I was CCO in InsurTech, in non-standard home insurance, which I always think is the least sexy business, but possibly the most intelligent, that can price a castle and a house for subsidence using machine learning models in a world that is the least sexy brand to deal with. So it's quite an interesting process. And then we started building Ekko about 3 years ago now, 3.5 years ago. There are 4 co-founders, and the story of Ekko, as all good businesses comes from a pub. And the 4 of us are in a pub. We knew each other. We weren't like close friends necessarily. We are obviously now, but we weren't at the time. And we were talking about sustainability. And the thoughts that we had around it was that I care as an individual about sustainability, but I find it really hard to know my impact and how to make positive change. And what I was finding was I had a relationship with sustainability like I do with the gym, where I go for a bit intensely. I don't really see any impact, and therefore I stop. And 4 months later, I go, I should do that again, shouldn't I? And I kind of kept doing that with sustainability. And the same kind of applied when we were talking about the businesses, because we all run different businesses at the time. I really want to do more for my business, but actually we print less. Okay, that's kind of rubbish. That's kind of expected. We have green energy, that's good, but it's a one-off decision. And how do we then empower our people or our business to make more sustainable choices and have a more sustainable working life? And we kind of got to a position where both of those are the same type of problem, where I want to do more, I just don't really know how, or empowerment, and I don't really know the data that proves that point, and therefore we're kind of really struggling with it. And then we thought about payments, and we are obsessed with payments and sustainability. And if you wrote those two kind of in a Venn diagram, payment sustainability, I don't think you'd necessarily cross them over, but actually we feel like it is the best place to start when it talks about sustainable outcomes. And the reason is that there are 700 billion transactions happening around the world every year. So 700 billion transactions. It is the moment of truth around what I actually do. So when I make a choice about whether I buy a sandwich at Pret or at a local coffee shop, let's say, it's the factual data. It's not an opinion of myself. It's factual. That's what I did. That was my behavior. It's also the moment where we get to see the data of what you bought and your transaction. So I can actually serve you with real-time stuff and information at the moment. And then it's also the moment I get to make a decision. So not only is it the proof point, but it's the moment I get to say, where am I going to go next? What was the impact of that? Okay, that's insightful. And finally, I do it 5 to 10 times a day. So I'm constantly doing this thing. I'm constantly making continual decisions when it comes to sustainability, whether I know it or not. I am. Our offices in Farringdon, and I got the tube in today. That has an impact. It's there. I tap my card 2 or 3 times today to get here. I can see that transaction. So I'm always interacting with it. So obsessed with that being the place of where we should actually spend our time and focusing on sustainability. And what we do at Ekko, so our mission is to empower millions of consumers and businesses around the world to take on sustainability. And we do that specifically through payments. So what we do is we look at any payment in the world. We can tell you the carbon footprint of what you just bought in real time to inform you the information. And then we have a menu of sustainable solutions that can allow that transaction to have a positive outcome. So it's not just, as Lars said, not just the information of this is the carbon tracking data of what I've done, but it's the so what. And then we have a behavioral analytics tool that helps you figure out ways to reduce your impact as well through positive reinforcement. So we're obsessed with helping people do good in the world by making you feel good about the good things you've already done. Almost like that Fitbit model where I'm being rewarded for the good behavior I've done, so I'm going to do more of it. And that approach to sustainability as well. So we have in the UK, we have our own consumer bank, which this is our our bank card. That's like any other bank card, like Monzo, like Revolut, etc. But as you tap it, we'll tell you the carbon footprint of what you bought in real time. Every 5 taps of the card at no cost to you will save a plastic bottle from entering our oceans. So preventing ocean plastic. Every 50 taps plants a tree. And unlike lots of tree places, our trees are planted, they're maintained for 5 years, they're audited by EY, they're placed based on impact, not on volume. They're kind of true impactful. And then you can take a subscription tier that says whatever you spend is also carbon offset. So as I tap it, Ekko carbon offsets your spend and helps you reduce your impact. And that's a really exciting proposition, which empowers customers every day. And the reason we've got this good vibes written on the front is to kind of make you smile and have that, I am doing good, this is a positive version versus getting out my insert random bank name. card out that is not good for the world, this one actually does do something. It kind of helps the world. That's great. We then offer it to employees. So back to my role as when I was running different businesses, we can give Ekko as an employee benefit. So all your employees learn about sustainability every single day, at work, outside of work. Your company is carbon offsetting their spend, helping them reduce their carbon impact inside of work, outside of work. The company's doing reforestation, saving plastic bottles from entering the ocean. And we're trying to give teams and leadership teams the tool to really engage their people every day on sustainability versus what we found is a one-off lunch and learn or a token half a day cleaning up some plastic and going to the pub versus this is an ongoing thing that we need to tackle and kind of change our mindset. And then we also offer all that technology to every bank in the world, every payment provider in the world, because we want to empower millions of people. Other people have 10, 20, 30, 40 million customers. You can take our technology and deploy it to those people because that gets us our goals faster. And the interesting thing comes with all this technology and data points is it's proven to work. So our data is showing us that our research is showing us that 68% of customers who use our technology now make more conscious decisions on every single transaction they do in their lives. 68%. So it's kind of showing that it's actually worth empowering people with information and making them make a conscious decision. And our view of sustainability is around conscious decisioning. I might order a steak for tea sometimes, but most of the time I will not. I'm trying to help people to kind of marry that information that I make more sustainable choices more often is the right answer for us versus everyone being perfect. Then I suppose a bit about where we are and what we're going for in terms of the roles that we're looking at and our kind of focus. For us, we are on as most scale-ups are, product and growth trajectory. How can we improve our product? How can we make it better for our customers? How can we grow the business? Is it marketing? Is it business development? How can we just grow the business, both consumers, businesses, merchants, banks, all that kind of spectrum? That's what we're going on. One of the interesting things I found, this is more kind of the founder story for those people looking to be a founder in the future, is what keeps you up at night. And there is always business stuff that keeps you up at night. Like you always focus on the bad things. You kind of, the good things are great, and then you just gloss over it pretty much straight away and move on to the bad things, spend your time there. And it has a real impact on you as an individual. And it's a really meaningful, and Liall, you're probably feeling this as well, that the sustained every day, all the time, thinking about Ekko. Even when I'm out with my wife for dinner, it's me, my wife, and Ekko out for dinner. And it's just a reality, and it's quite painful that you speak to someone and not even listening. I'm thinking about something else entirely. And that has a real world impact. I think one of the lessons I've learned is trying to be present in the moment throughout this. So when I'm with my kids reading their bedtime story, I work really hard to focus that I'm there with them versus reading the Gruffalo whilst actually thinking about some technology issue that I've got going on, which I was doing, and I caught myself in it. And as you kind of do this if you are doing that founder journey or kind of a really powerful role or an impactful role, is trying to make sure you're present. It's probably the one tip I would give, because it protects you, it protects what actually matters, which your family and your friends, etc., and your kind of your own mental well-being, which is tough doing this stuff. And balancing that early doors and getting that right is really important. I'm sure there's loads of questions. I could go on for hours about Ekko, as you can imagine, but I will not, unless you let me, and then I will.
Tempting, because it's so enjoyable to listen to. But yeah, we'll stop there and we'll go into the breakout rooms. Oli, thank you so much for that. Yeah, some really interesting things in there. And the volume of transactions, that is phenomenal. 700 billion, did you say, transactions taking place every single day? Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. And like you said, a really good place to start when it comes to tackling sustainability.